Keith, I'm so glad you're here today. We're going to have so much fun talking about CPAs. Kyle, it's a pleasure always to co-host the show. So Keith, tell me a little bit about I know we have known each other for a long time being a little bit relative.
Yes. About 3 weeks.
Has it been that long?
Mm-hmm.
Feels like a lot longer. No, we've known each other for a couple of years now. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your background, tell me about your family, and most importantly, because we're going to zero in on your career, tell me about your path to becoming a CPA.
Sure. Well, I grew up in this area. I grew up in Gastonia on the other side of the river, in this high-class area of Charlotte. I'm not very welcome. That's okay.
What
you can come for the day.
Gastonia?
Gastonia, yes. The west side of wherever. But my family, we currently live in Belmont, North Carolina. So we used to live in Charlotte for 15 years. And we moved over there about 10 years ago. And we have 3 kids. We have a daughter, Marin, who is a junior in high school. Elliot's 14. He's a freshman. And Rory is 11. She's a 6th grader. They all go to Gaston Christian School. And we love it there.
That's awesome.
My wife's a teacher there. She teaches 5th grade
I
math.
think I knew that.
Yeah, maybe not. She's been teaching for...
Did you know that?
I did know that.
Yeah.
They just love...
Kyle
numbers.
is actually my friend. He knows things, yes. But as far as my career, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, came out of school.
Go Duke.
Tar Heels. They're everywhere.
Can we cut that out?
Nope. Okay. That's staying in, baby.
I started my career working for BDO Seidman straight out of school.
Is that a large firm?
Yeah, they're a large firm. I'm not sure if they're national now, but
bigger firm.
Very big, very large. They just go by BDO now. You see commercials on TV sometimes.
Ooh, so there you are.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
They're fancy.
So then I took a little detour a few years later. The guy that was my manager there, he got a job in the Cayman Islands for KPMG. And I just kind of half-heartedly told him to let me know if they needed a job or if they needed help when he got down there. And so a few months later, he called me and they needed help. So we moved down there and we lived there for a couple of years. And we did a lot of, all they do there really are.
Did you say you moved it down there?
We moved down there.
Oh, wow.
Did you have
came
kids?
back?
We lived there when we got married, when Bethany and I got married.
Did you know this?
I did know that, but I didn't know that you stayed there. I knew that you worked out of the Caymans, but I didn't know that you moved.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you have to live there if you're going to work there.
That's awesome. I just thought it was like a commuting back and forth.
Oh, no.
Nowadays you can go work somewhere and then come back.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
well, back then, that was.
I mean, he's old. I mean, that was a long time ago.
That was 20 years ago.
Exactly.
There was no
Yeah, I guess
remote work. There were no remote workers.
So how long were you there?
I was in high school.
Yeah. We were there not quite 2 years. First year was really great. They had a bad hurricane that came through there, Hurricane Ivan, that literally destroyed the entire place. So everyone that worked for KPMG moved to Toronto. We worked out of their office for a few months while they were, cleaning up the island. And we moved back down there, and then it was just never the same. I mean, we lost everything we had.
Wow.
We lost our cars. We lost all of our clothes. We lost, everyone did. Lost everything. So it just wasn't the same. It was very tough to live there after that. So we decided.
I didn't know we'd start on such a sour note.
I know.
Shouldn't have asked the
You
question.
asked me.
I thought we're talking about your career, and you're like, we lost everything.
Yeah.
If you would
Well, it
stop
sounded exciting.
interrupting, I was trying to get to the point, but you guys keep sidetracking me. But anyway, down there they do. There's a lot of hedge funds, a lot of captive insurance companies, and that's what we did tax work for primarily. So that's kind of where I got my feet wet doing international tax work. So when we moved back here, we went to work for Dixon Hughes, which is now, they've merged with some other people. I'm not sure. Oh, they're Forvis now. They've changed their name to Forvis, if you've heard of them.
Nope.
So they're I specialized in international tax work for mainly large corporations. And that's where I met now my partner at work, David Kosmeyer. We both worked there. And we both left there in 2010 to start our own firm. And that's where we are now. So,
How many offices do you have?
we have 2 offices, one here in Charlotte and one in Mooresville.
Not one in Gastonia?
Not one in Gastonia.
Why not?
Because it's Gastonia.
All right. So
They all come to Charlotte again.
Yeah,
That's right.
So
let's
Just
talk
not the
about.
same.
We're gonna fast forward through that. Let's talk about the real role of a CPA, but I don't want you to answer that just yet. Why don't you
Okay.
tell me real quick,
Oh,
Kyle?
geez.
Yes, I'm putting you on the spot right now. Give me an understanding of why somebody would hire. Like, what's the role of a CPA?
Yeah, for me, I'm not dealing with anything with the IRS. So I go to a professional that I believe has some understanding of tax code and can file whatever my taxes are for the year. But then also, my hope is that they come with some advice later on. I know tax season is very busy, but in the fall, that type, fall into the year, hopefully there's some type of review, like what did your year look like? And is there anything that we can do in November, December to help set you up for a better tax season?
Success.
Yeah.
So, what do you think on that answer there, Keith?
I think that's very true. I think, the reasons people give are all over the board.
Okay.
A big one is people are scared of the IRS, kind of like what
Yeah.
you mentioned. They're scared that they're going to make a mistake if they try to do their own tax return. And people really believe they're going to go to jail if they make a mistake. It's a misconception, but that's what they think. We get that
So you
question
can't
all
go
the
to
time.
jail if you make a mistake.
No.
All right, can you get that on record?
Yes. If you commit fraud, yes, you can go to jail. But if at the end of the day, it's just money. The IRS wants you to pay what you pay or what you're supposed to pay.
Or a penalty.
Yeah, and you can suffer penalties and interest. But
So, what do you think is the most important role that you carry out for somebody who you're doing their taxes for?
obviously, most important is to get it right. But beyond that, it's to make them feel comfortable. I believe that I have to be competent. They have to trust me, and then I have to provide them some sort of value. And there are, again, there's clients all over the board. There's some clients that don't want any value. They just want you to do their work because they don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's great. We have a lot of those clients, but it's not exciting. Not for me. It's not. If all we do is just fill out the tax returns forms, that's kind of like a commodity. It's not very interesting.
So you just said it's not exciting for me. So what is exciting in the tax world?
Nothing. No.
You heard it here first. First one to admit it.
Yeah, I am a CPA.
I was expecting some great answer.
No.
Nothing wasn't going to rain.
No. Yes. No. Yeah. Helping people. If you're a value, the value I provide is everything outside of a tax return. We have to be business advisors. We have to help people structure their businesses in efficient ways, whether that be, from a business perspective or from a tax perspective. We have to help them plan for the future.
Yep.
Business owners especially, they always reach a point they want to sell their business. They
Yep.
either just because that was their plan all along or because they're going to retire. And that's not, if it's done correctly, it's not something you just decide and do within a year. You have to plan
There's
for that
planning and
5 years ahead of time, whatever the case may be.
Well,
And
the shocking thing about selling a business is when I first got into, being a financial advisor, when the first guy's like, I think I want to sell my business, I learned so much through that first one. We've been through a lot since then. There's so many different types of sales. It's not just, I'm just going to sell my business and they're going to give me this pile of money. There's so much that goes into that. It's an asset sale. Are you selling a brand? Are you selling materials? Are you selling files? Are you selling intellectual property? I mean, there's so many different things and tax situations that go along with it. You're like, yeah. So when you're going to talk to somebody like, yeah, I just sold my business, they could have spent a year or two or more deciding the right buyer, the right structure. Like, how are they selling the whole business? Are they keeping some back? Is it a sale that happens in one transaction? Is there like 4 years that happens after that? That depending on what you're totally going to get. I mean, it's exhaustive, and what happens. And that's just one of the many things that you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a common, I mean, we like to focus on small business owners. They're always selling. And so my partner, David, is an M&A specialist. So he really gets involved anytime someone's going to sell their business. And it always inevitably involves restructuring legally something. And like you said, a buyer always wants to buy assets. A seller always wants to sell their equity because of the tax treatment.
Yeah.
So
and they war against each other.
And it's a negotiation. Generally the buyer wins out because the seller wants to sell ultimately.
Not always. It really depends.
But there's things you can do to make it, beneficial to both sides.
Yeah.
And it's just, but it requires a lot of planning, a lot of foresight.
All right. So where I want to take us at this point is really understanding, the true benefits of a CPA and the benefits of doing it yourself. So kind of DIY tax planning. And I want to jump into, understanding, when it's appropriate to hire a CPA. Like, when are you out of your league? Not you, somebody like me, which would probably be pretty quick. And then, if you don't have a complicated situation, when does it really make sense to just do one of those online tax services and just do it yourself as cheap as possible? Or in the extreme situation, just do your own taxes, not even use a service.
Right.
And we're going to probably have fun navigating our way there. So let's talk about the advantages of hiring a CPA.
Well, they have the magic wand, right?
What
That's
do you
my
mean?
favorite. Whenever we have clients come in and they're like, hey, do you have a CPA and that you can refer us to? I'm just really looking to save on tax. Like, they automatically think that because you hire a CPA, they've got this magic wand that they get to
Where is it?
lord over.
Can you show it to me?
I always tell people I don't wave fairy dust.
You don't?
No.
How do you save somebody taxes?
Because that's
then?
always, I'm paying too much tax.
Yes,
Like,
everyone thinks they're paying too
because
much.
you make a lot of money. But then that devalues my role.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people. I mean, look, people around here, especially people work for banks.
Mhm.
They're all W-2 employees. They may have a large W-2, and there's nothing you can do about that. I mean,
There's no way to save.
There's just
on
no
that
way to
situation.
reduce that. It
Yeah.
has to be reported. I mean, there are some things you can capitalize on to get deductions, to get tax credits. But I also tell people, at the end of the day, if you're going to get a tax deduction, if you're going to get a tax credit, it requires you to get rid of your money in some way. And no one wants to hear that, but that's the truth. I mean, you don't get a deduction unless you've...
What do you mean get rid of your money?
I mean, you are going to part with your money. I mean, a simple example is you give money to charity. Well, you have to give your money away. You can get a tax deduction for it.
Or invest it in a tax deferred
right,
account.
or invest it, in a retirement account, invest it in another business that's maybe can generate losses for you in something. There are no tax credits that arise without you spending money first.
Yeah.
You just parking it.
Right.
Or if you're a W-2 and you make a lot of money, investing in some sort of real estate or something like that might not be a benefit immediately, but there are plenty of things you can do down the road.
Yep.
And the benefit of that is you have a business now, and having that real estate company, property holdings company, whatever that is, gives you a lot more opportunities to save more tax. You had to spend money to get it, but then moving forward, you might not have to spend that much to get more tax benefits.
Right.
And I know there's a loaded stuff. We're making eyes here. There's a lot more to it, but yeah. So, all right.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest benefits of hiring a CPA? We're going to talk more about the disadvantages in a second, but what are the biggest benefits? For me, it'd be what you already mentioned, just the time.
Yep.
I mean, we have several different businesses here and there's so much going on. I mean, I showed you my taxes the other day and it was that thick. I mean, it was just
Like a
ridiculous.
Stephen King novel.
Yeah. And it was, the full 8 by 11 or whatever sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh my gosh, that's just what it, and I'm like, I have no idea. And there's like 6 of them in there.
Not even sure that it could have gone through a G drive.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way I could do that in no universe ever. Even if I was a CPA, there's no way I could do that. And I could never, this is not the way my brain works. So time savings is a big for me.
Yep.
I would say another one for me would be error reduction. When I think about a CPA, I think about somebody who is so attentive to detail. That is not a strong suit of mine. Mine is like 35,000 vision, let me come up and invent something and then I'm done.
Yep.
For CPA, it's like in the weeds of the weeds. Like in every minute detail, like when I ask a CPA a question, they'll ask me 17 follow-up questions to make sure they're answering the question I'm really asking. Like that's awesome. So when I think of error reduction, I immediately would think of a CPA. What can you think of that would be a huge benefit of a CPA?
I alluded to it earlier, but just that guidance to know what I don't know, especially as being younger and owning my own financial practice. I don't know what I don't know about how to set up structure. We've even gone to lunch about a side business that I'm setting up. And I was like, what's the best way to even, do you incorporate C Corp, S Corp, LLC? I don't know what any of these letters mean. How do you structure it? Right. So for me,
and all of that was driven by an eventual exit out of the business.
Correct.
So he's just starting, and the whole conversation is based on, when am I going to sell this? Mm-hmm. And what kind of structure do you need to be in? Yep. And that's what people need to know. And a lot of times that's what, it's up to you as the client to have some sort of understanding of that before we ever talk. Because if you don't, then that doesn't happen. If we don't go to lunch, you don't know all of these things, and you're just going to set up some business, and it's going to be the wrong structure. Mm-hmm. And then you
might be 3 years down the road, and now you're in a boatload of tax problems because you didn't set it up right the first time.
Right. And so it's a two-way street that, and so we always have to educate our clients on that. It's like, I can help you, but I can only help you with the information that I have. Yep. If you do things that I don't know about.
Hence those 17 follow-up questions.
Right. Then after the fact, there's sometimes you can correct, I'll call them mistakes, but sometimes you can't, and it's too late, and you just have to live with it.
It's a very similar thing even in our world.
In our world, yeah.
We can only help you with the information that you give us.
We'll only be as accurate as the information you allow me to see. Yeah. Yep.
And don't call us after the fact.
Well, you can, but we'd be like, you didn't tell me. I'm not the bad guy here.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I gave you umpteen opportunities.
And we told you go spend X, not Y.
Right.
So one of the things that I would say is the number one benefit moving forward, in my personal opinion, and I just got into a conversation last week with somebody else who's going through an audit. I think with the big push in AI, there's going to be a significant amount of audits on the everyday person moving forward. Probably it's going to be a new norm where we go through audits, AI-driven audits, almost on a yearly basis. What benefits does a CPA help through the audit process, and how can you help make sure that the audit process is minimized now that we know there's going to be these AI bots that are looking over every single tax return from many different angles now? We don't have to worry about a human going, oh, there's not much there, or it's not worth a human's time to look at this value of a tax return. Now a bot can do it in milliseconds.
And run all the way down the rabbit trail
in every single case. I'm not doing this to scare anybody, but this is going to be the new norm, where W-2 employees who have never been audited before are going to be audited now, because now they have the technology to look over everybody's shoulder. Mm-hmm. Where does the CPA help in this?
Before the audit occurs.
And this is being recorded. corrupted.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there.
Yes. Did I mess up? Can that be cut? Before the audit occurs, it's education. It's what kind of records do you need to keep? I mean, people think the CPA keeps all the records. I'm like, well, we don't keep all, especially if you own a business. We don't have all of your records.
You have
all
whatever
the
is
support
provided
for
to
what you are
Yeah.
putting in your financial statements. I don't have that information. You do, and you need to understand that when you are audited, what is the IRS going to be asking for? What are they going to be looking at? What are some of the things that they're focused on currently? I mean, one of the things right now is is shareholder loans. If you own a S corporation and it's legitimate, the business can loan you money as the owner, but it's just we don't need to go into the detail of why that happens.
It's being triggered,
but
now.
It's being triggered now. That's one thing they're looking at. And if you don't have everything documented that this is actually what happened, then they're going to tell you it's all income.
Yeah.
They're going to say you took $200,000 out. Why didn't you report it? And then it's going to turn into a mess.
Yeah.
So you need to be prepared that might happen ahead of time.
So in regards to this, help me understand one thing. Who signs the tax return and who's ultimately liable and who bears some responsibility or all responsibility on a tax return?
You do as the client.
Who else signs it?
I do.
What
We
responsibility?
both sign it.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
What does that mean when you sign it?
It means I am signing to say that I prepared it, which the IRS then gets that information. And so does it. It signifies that I have taken due care and followed all the rules I'm supposed to follow as a CPA to ensure that this is accurate. Meaning I'm not knowingly signing my name to this when I know that something is false on the return or not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another level. It's kind of like, when someone does an audit on a set of financial statements, they're not signing saying, I know 100% that this is true and accurate, but they are signifying that they've done all this level of work to do their best to ensure that.
Is there any liability back to the CPA?
There can be. But it has to be proven that you knew that something was wrong on the return.
And the only reason I'm asking is, a financial advisor, we bear some responsibility in the financial planning process. We don't necessarily sign every document, or investment recommendation, but our name's everywhere, right? And I don't want, the average listener out there to be like, well, it's 100% us, which it is 100% us because we're the ones making it, providing it. But as a CPA, there's responsibility on your side to make sure everything's accurate. You're following the rules. You're doing everything knowingly the way that the IRS is asking.
Right.
But you can get in trouble just like I can get in trouble.
Sure.
So, and that's important to know. Like, you are taking risk by doing your job, just like we are. Like, it's my job. It's my career. I love what I do. But every time I make a recommendation, every time I put together a plan, the government, the governing bodies over our industry, they're looking at me just as hard as they're looking at where the money's coming from and the investor on that side.
Right.
And the same is true in your industry.
And and that's why, CPAs have a bad not a bad reputation, but
You have the best
stereotypical reputation of being
1A.
anal, and no personality, and there's a lot of them out there.
No personality. A
I
CPA?
know.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Driven with personality.
Most don't do a podcast like this, but that's why a lot of them are like that. Is because they can lose their license. If they lose their license because they've did something wrong, then their career's over.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of risk. And I
want to make light of that.
No.
Because that is a huge advantage of hiring a CPA.
Right.
That you're putting your name, you're literally signing somebody's tax return. There's good amount of disadvantages we're going to talk about here in a second. But a huge advantage amongst all the stuff that we talked about is that you are taking risk. You are putting your practice, your name, your license on the line by filling out somebody's tax return.
Right.
Yeah.
And everything, when we talked about the advantages of a CPA, man, one of the educational pieces of it is educating the clients on the risk and reward of whatever position they're taking, because there is a lot of gray area. There's a lot of room in the tax law for interpretation.
A lot.
You would be surprised, but there is. And so sometimes there's not a clear-cut answer, and you have to take a position. You want it to be reasonable. You want it to be, if you had to stand in front of the IRS and argue it, you want to have a good argument for why you did this.
Absolutely.
But in that situation, you're taking a risk. What is that risk? How big is it?
You're taking the risk, and I'm
right.
taking
We
the
both
risk.
are. And so,
because if that goes to a trial or you get investigated or, whatever the situation is, I might be having to defend myself, and you're going to have to defend yourself at the same time, where the IRS is like, okay, it was, whoever, or, hey, we have no case here, which happens.
Right. Yeah. It happens all the time.
All the time. I've been not investigated, but I've gotten letters from the IRS saying, hey, this was wrong. There's this fee, or this penalty. I'm like faxing him, emailing my CPA. What's this, bro? $900
He's immediately
for what?
mad. It's
Yeah.
the CPA's fault.
Instantly.
Yes.
And 99.9% of the time, it was crossed in the mail.
Yep.
Or there was a misunderstanding. There has been times when I've had to pay a fee for whatever reason, and I wouldn't say every time has been my fault. There's been times where my CPA that I've been using for almost 20 years, where he's like, "Yeah, we missed this."
Yep.
So it happens.
It happens.
It happened. If I'd probably a whole lot more fee if I was doing it. All right, so let's talk about the disadvantages really quick. The first and foremost that everybody's going to have in their minds is the cost.
Yes.
Gotta pay it. Why?
You have to pay. And the more tax work you do, the higher that cost is. And I feel like in recent years, I'd say over the last 5 years, I feel like CPA costs have exponentially gone up compared to where it was when I first started. I don't know what's changed, but there's definitely a cost issue, which we'll address. Another thing is finding a good match. You mentioned that lightning, amazing personality thing that you've got going on as a CPA. Dripping with personality, which is so great. They're different people, different folks for different things, and that's a big issue in my opinion, making sure you can understand, which leads into the third biggest is the potential for errors. I think there's a protection of errors, but depending on the personality and how you are and how they are, there might be a whole lot of miscommunication going on, because you don't have to like your CPA. You talk to them like 3 times a year. As long as they do their good
Some
job.
people once and call them up
Or
in
not
February.
at all.
Not at all.
Email
Just
everything.
email. That's right.
And Keith's like, I like that.
Here's
So-
my 2 W-2s.
So let's talk right from the CPA. Let's talk about the cost. What's a typical, you don't have to give me numbers, but what's happened in recent time? Is it because of more regulation? Like, why have costs, and I might be off base here. My CPA is going to watch and be like, oh, I can feel him under his breath. So help me understand the cost in the situation. Like, why is that such a big disadvantage?
Well, it's just, the rise in costs. Number one, we're professionals. The rise in costs is driven by, a lot of things that, obviously common answer now is inflation, but that wasn't the case 2 years ago.
No.
But there has been inflation in our
Labor.
costs.
Yeah.
Yes, labor, the software we have to use, everything's gone electronic. Along with that, we now have to do everything paperless, which was a huge transition in the CPA world. Everything was paper, physical file storage,
not
all
anymore.
this, all of that had to be converted to digital files. And it just comes with an added cost burden.
Yep.
And other, these, you have H&R Block, you have people like that out there that you would be shocked the number of clients we get who did their return with H&R Block the year before, and H&R Block charged them $800, and it's like,
Whoa.
it's not a complicated return. It's not difficult, and so all of that has just driven the market up
because
of
the computer-based services out there that have the least amount of contact with a human being, those have gone up,
yes,
which has given more private CPAs the freedom to say, well, if they're charging $800 and they're doing the most simple basic things, then I can charge $1,600 because we're going to be doing a lot more.
it's giving them room. Yes, and
them as a CPA or
the CPAs. I mean,
You?
I don't want. We haven't made that conscious decision, but there is a market value for what you do,
I totally
and you
agree.
do need to be aware of that. And so we try to match that. I mean, and that market value depends on what CPA you're working with. Obviously, if you're working with a Big Four firm, they're charging a lot way more than we are. But it's just,
I mean, I know CPAs that have a minimum.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, no matter what you do with me, you're going to pay X. And some of those minimums are like just ridiculous.
yeah. I mean, we have minimums, but it's the purpose of that for us at least is, we have only a certain amount of time. We're a service provider. We get paid by our time, based on our time.
Yeah.
And, what is that worth to us? What do we need to be paid just to
Break
even?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to pay for our office
business
space, our
just like everybody
employees,
else.
everything else. And that's, doing your own taxes with TurboTax costs $150 or whatever it costs, but that's it. That's the only cost. Well, we have a lot more cost that we have to cover.
And you can do a lot more things.
And we
too.
can, I mean, and so obviously it's a disadvantage. No one wants to pay for it, but I shouldn't say that. A lot of people don't mind, but it's something that you have to consider.
Well,
We
it's-
always get that question when
it's
we're
the
bringing on
cost
a new
of
client.
value,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's, where does the true value of a CPA come in versus the real value of doing it yourself,
Right.
where, your situation or your confidence in your ability to do things accurately, error-free, being able to say, okay, if I get audited, I'm good on my own. I mean, all the stuff, my blood pressure just went up thinking about all that stuff.
Right.
Like I have to have a professional right beside me or more, because of how complicated my situation is. Even if it was just a W-2, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing this by myself.
Right. And it's, for you, what is your time worth to you? It's because you don't want to do it. You don't want to,
I'm incapable of doing it.
I mean,
Like, let's
so
just
I've
call it what it
literally,
is.
from the day I started working fresh out of college, I've always had a CPA
Yeah.
do my taxes.
Same.
And both my parents, that was just what was modeled for me. They were
Right.
teachers.
Yeah.
They're your quintessential two W-2s working at, working at the high school and elementary school. They gave to their church and that was it. They could have easily done, whatever it is, TurboTax or whatever.
So some advantages of doing
Yeah.
tax yourself, I only really have two. Okay. You might.
what are they, Paul?
All right. Cost savings,
Cost savings?
because I don't have to pay you. And then understanding
Perception of cost savings.
no true value, true dollars. It might cost you way more time, but you save money. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that goes back to your point. What's your
time worth?
While we're on the cost savings part, I just wanted to ask, I read an article that the majority of audits that are happening are by people who are doing their taxes on their own, either by, filing through TurboTax or just filling it out their own tax form. Is that true, or am I just reading something on Google?
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I mean, my experience is people that get audited, it's always because of something the IRS is focusing on.
Yeah.
If you run your own business and it's a Schedule C, a sole proprietorship, a lot of those get audited because it's just there's a lot of errors made when
Yep.
people do that, or a lot of
Okay.
risky positions. So it's
Yeah.
not. I wouldn't say it's based on whether you do it yourself or there's a CPA doing it. It's
Okay.
just
Okay.
depends on
So-
what's on your return.
I would say the biggest benefit of doing your own taxes would be the understanding that you would get by doing your own taxes. It's when you're put in a situation where you're like, hey, I've got to do everything accurate. You understand, you bear the burden of 100% of that risk. Nobody else is going to help you fight any battles. You want to know the law. You want to know the rules. You want to understand the accuracy of what you're putting down. Like what's 15A, you know, what are all these lines, you know, what do they mean? How important are they? And do I have to do like a schedule, whatever? And how do I fill that out accurately? When you look at your tax return, when you do it yourself and you do it a good job, you know exactly what you're looking at. I'll look at like page 400. I'm like, I have no idea what this is. You know, like, what the heck is that? You know, like there's just a huge benefit to getting your hands wet or dirty or whatever and being like, I know exactly what everything means on my taxes.
Yep.
Even if you have a CPA, I'd recommend that. I don't file my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just too complicated.
That's too far gone.
There's a lot that I want to know because as I go through the year, I want to be thinking, hey, I can save here. I can do this. Because if it's by the time I get to the CPA, he's like, well, you should have did this. So it's important to do my job to help him do his. And if you're doing your own, you get that, you know, year round, right? All right, so let's talk about the disadvantages of doing tax yourself. What would you say? Go ahead, man.
I bet the list is long.
Yeah. I mean,
give us some of the
it's
things
not
you've seen.
knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know what you qualify for.
Mhm.
You don't know how to
You don't run in the
logistically
CPA
prepare
circles.
something.
Yeah.
What you don't know is you don't know the tax law. I mean, tax is legal. Everything behind it is law. It's
And
like
always
being
changing.
an attorney. Yeah, and even CPAs do not and cannot know everything that's in the tax law. That's why people specialize in one area of it. It's just like attorneys. You have a real estate attorney, you have whatever, an M&A attorney. They specialize in something. Of course, it's our job to know as much as we can, but there's always we run up against situations, and I have to tell people, I'm sorry, you need to work with someone else on this because I do not have that knowledge. I don't have that expertise. But for the average person, you know, we do pride ourselves on knowing the tax law that would affect
The average situation.
The average situation.
Yeah.
And so we need to know, and it does change all the time.
All the time.
It's always, you know, political and negotiable, and you know, they're passing new laws for new tax credits to drive some agenda that they
Every
have.
change of administration seems to change all kinds of stuff.
Everything. It's all driven through the tax. Not all of it, but a lot of it's driven through the tax law.
Yeah.
And so we have to stay abreast of all of that and understand how it affects everyone in whatever situation you're in. And what, you know, when you're doing planning for people, those are the things you need to know right now before the end of the year, because you have to take whatever steps it is to qualify for these credits, to take these deductions, to get you in the situation you want to be in before the end of the year.
Man, that's one of those where I'm like, whoa.
What do you think? What do you think the biggest disadvantage of doing your own taxes?
Oh, I'm all over that. Like the not knowing what I don't know. Like that is
The stress and anxiety of just
I'm going to screw something up. Like I enjoy numbers and all that, like good with math, but this is next level. Feeling whenever I see it up on my CPA screen and he's just like, you know, going through, typing in numbers. I'm like, it's moving a little faster than I want him to.
So help me understand, because I would say we keep going back to this time. You know, what's the cost of your time? How important is your time? Help me understand, and this is just going to be a guess. You can fly through a tax return, especially with all the help that you have and prepares and things like that. If somebody's going to do their own taxes, a simple W-2, an engineer, you know, somebody working at a typical, it can be a high-paying typical job, $200,000, $300,000. You know, and they have got investments on the side, things like that. How much time is it going to take the average person in that situation to do their taxes accurately, well done, prepared, you know, maximizing however you want to list that on tax savings? What do you think?
I mean, a very simple situation, no more than 30 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
I mean,
I was going to be way off
a little
on that.
biased because
There's no way
I know
it's going to
everything
take me
about-
30
Yeah.
minutes. If not you,
but an
me.
hour.
Like
if
somebody
you
like
just have
me.
a W-2, if that's it,
No, you got investments. You've got some.
Yeah,
like
maybe
say
you gotta-
somebody who's in their 50s.
I mean,
who is-
okay, maybe an hour. If you include you have to gather all your documents and have everything together, and before you're actually doing any of the work.
Yeah,
quote unquote.
everything.
Yeah, okay, an hour. Let's say an hour.
Man, you're
What are
way
you gonna
more
say?
generous.
Paul, what was Paul going to say?
I would have
4
said
hours?
several hours
Yeah.
to just gather the right documents to make sure because I mean that alone can be stressful for the right person. Because not ever. I mean, I get people in my office all the time. We'll do 2 hours of meetings over 2 different days. The third meeting, they come in like, oh, I forgot about an investment. I see all the time the lack of detail. I'll be in another meeting and the spouses will look at each other. Like, do you know how to get that? They don't even know how to get their statement.
I know.
Yeah.
But
They don't
those
even
are
know
you're
their
being like a
password.
half
no,
hour.
no. But listen, those
I'm
are
going to
people.
argue on this one.
Those people have more complicated situations.
No,
Yes.
they're all W-2 employees.
Yeah, but they have other things involved with it. They have all these investments they've made. They need to know where they are. What even.
So this is that
where do I need
communication
to look?
breakdown.
Yeah.
In
Right.
my opinion, this is the average person. The average person in today's society, at least the average person that walks through our door, and we have all kinds. We have people that have less than $100,000 investments, and people have millions.
Let me stop you there. You have people that have investments walk into your door. The average
But that's
person
what I'm
doesn't.
talking about. Well, I guess I'm biased there.
They don't. I'm
Or they
telling
just have
you.
their 401k.
Yeah,
at
or
work.
yeah,
So
Or they're
that
just
person
starting
is
again.
like an hour and a half
Yes.
max.
yes.
What about
As long
a
as they
person
know their
that's got
passwords.
investments?
A person that has investments, and investments come in all forms. They can be
Yeah. Real estate.
working
Real
with
estate.
you guys. They
Yeah.
can be real estate. They can be they've invested in another business that gives them a K1 partnership, whatever. Sure, it can take several hours. I mean, I hate doing my own taxes for that very purpose
You do
because
your
I
own
hate
taxes?
gathering all of the information.
All the
And
documents.
even
Yeah.
though I'm a CPA, I know everything that goes on in my own
That I
life.
help, yeah.
But I hate pulling it all together and making sure that I have everything before I even
Hate it.
begin. I hate it. I hate it.
How many times can we say hate?
I have not.
That's me, though.
I have not filed my tax return for last year.
And your number is what?
I
If
always
people wanna-
file it on October the 15th. October the 15th.
Double
That's my
extension.
date.
Yeah.
1 year I was late, November the 5th or something.
What do they say? The plumber's pipes always leak.
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, that's because you're so busy working for
It
everybody
is.
else.
That's because I do such a good job.
Yes.
Serving
For all
others.
of my clients. And I have
So-
people that want me to record podcasts instead of work.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guilty.
That's good.
All right. So let's ask a couple questions. When we were doing some prep on what we were going to talk about on the show, I wanted to make sure that we could arm people with really good questions to ask a CPA. Because if you're in a situation, and I'd want to hear from you. This is the first. This is my question to you, not the questions that we're going to ask. If you could give advice on somebody who could do their own taxes, not hire a CPA, help me. Give me a scenario where it's going to be in their best interest to not hire a CPA. Who's that person out there?
I mean, in my mind, it's the person we just discussed. I mean, if you're just an everyday average person that works a job, whether you're married or not, you both work a job, you both get a W-2.
You don't
whether you own your house or not, whether you rent. I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. I mean, you have to report your W-2s. If you own your house, yes, you can deduct your mortgage interest and your property taxes and your charitable contributions and all that. But I mean, it's not complicated.
So no
But-
outside investments, just a 401k
No,
or two.
yeah.
So they got a 401k through their employer. They might even have an IRA outside from a previous job because I know the average person switches jobs all the
Yep.
time right now, right?
Right.
So you've got a couple IRAs, you've got 401ks, and you've got your W-2, whether you own a home or rent.
Right.
That's the box that we're going to put around. You don't even need a CPA.
I view that as pretty straightforward and an easy situation to navigate.
to go to an online service to do it
Yeah.
yourself.
I mean, as soon as you have investments, you own real estate,
Everything
you've
changes.
invested in anything, you're introducing an entire new set of rules
Yep.
that you need to understand and navigate through. if you work a job where you work in multiple states and you get reported income in multiple states,
Things change
it complicates
quickly.
things quickly. Yep.
All right, thanks. I really wanted to have a better understanding of that. So what are, if you're going to talk to somebody to help them hire the best CPA for their situation, here's some questions that we kind of talk through. The first one is, what are your qualifications and certifications? So if I'm going to ask a CPA that, what kind of answer do I want to get?
Well, I mean, it depends on your situation as far as what you're looking for, but obviously I need to be a CPA.
Yeah,
A lot of
licensed.
Licensed CPA.
Explain that.
I don't have any.
What's that mean?
Yeah. What's the who wouldn't be a CPA?
Well, you can be I can prepare your taxes. What I cannot do is I cannot sign them.
So a
unless
tax
I'm a
preparer is
CPA.
different than a
Tax
CPA.
preparer is different. H&R Block are tax preparers. They're not signing your return.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
There's
TurboTax on
another
that?
level called an enrolled agent, which is not a CPA. It means they have not passed the CPA exam. They have not, there's other things required to get your license. You have to maintain it.
What does the enrolled agent do?
An enrolled agent, they pass another test, but it's much less.
What can they not do?
They can do everything a CPA can do. They just don't have all of the same education behind it. All of the same. They didn't pass the same exam. I don't want to reduce the value of an enrolled agent. It's just it's easier to become an enrolled agent than a CPA.
Mm-hmm. You could find still a good.
I mean, some of them are great.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. It's just another.
So in our
level.
space, that'd be the difference of a financial advisor or a CPA, designated financial advisor.
CFP.
Sorry, CFP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
CFP is just another level of education, and advisors in our industry is pushing the CFP as like, oh, you have to have a CFP.
Right.
No, you don't. Like it's a certification.
Right.
Doesn't mean the people without the CFP designation can't do the same exact things.
Right.
It's just they don't have the designation.
Well, and then you're subject to the scrutiny of the board, the oversight board that, makes sure that we
It's not
do
a bad
things the
thing,
correct,
but it's not
the correct way.
required.
Right. It's not required. But beyond that, it's, do I have the knowledge? Am I competent in whatever area you're looking for help in?
That was the next question.
Nice.
What are your areas of expertise?
Right. And so mostly we have business owners come in, and it's always a situation of, do you know my industry? Do you know the tax advantages that are available to someone that works in my industry?
So meaning if I own my own business, I am a financial advisor. I am a real estate mogul. I am and I own an engineer company. So you want the CPA to be able to, specialize in that business.
Right. I mean, and not every industry has a lot of things that are special, that require special knowledge.
Okay.
But a lot do as well. Real estate is its own entire subset of the tax law. I mean, you have to, and within real estate, there's all different kinds of real estate. You can own a rental property. You can be a construction guy. You can
Commercial real estate, I'm sure has
You can be a person that puts together real estate investments for other people, like REITs, funds like that. And you have to understand. As a
so much
CPA,
there.
needs to understand all the tax law behind all of those things.
So what about this question? How important is it, and what do we need to know? How long have you been in practice? What do you want the CPA to say there?
100 years.
100 years.
Maybe not that long.
It's like a pilot, right?
Then they
long
might
have you
not be
been
able
in
to think anymore. But
It's 2000.
no, I mean,
No. Wait, maybe we need to rephrase that. How long have you been a CPA? Because if I asked you the question, how long have you been in business? You said 2010, right? However, you've been a CPA for a lot longer than that.
Been in business for myself. Yeah. But I've been a CPA since 2002. So I think that's right. I don't know. I'll have to research.
What is that gap? Can you come straight out of college and be a CPA?
No, you have to have a certain number of hours. You have to have worked underneath another CPA for a certain number of hours before you can be licensed. I think that is now I don't know what it is, but it's more than a
changed.
year. Like you
Yeah.
have to work at least a year underneath
Under someone.
the oversight of another CPA to do that. That's even if you've passed the exam. You can pass the exam and you can't get your license until you've met this criteria.
So then the next question we have is, what types of clients do you usually work with? That goes back to what you said earlier. You know, do you work with my type of industry? Do you specialize? Because there are certain CPAs, like I know one, he's specialized with startups.
Yep.
He only works with startups.
Yep.
You know, so, and we have another one that I know of that he only does dentists. He's like, you know, if you're a dentist,
Yep.
I'm your guy. If you're somebody else, I'm,
Sorry.
you know, yeah, I don't specialize in that.
That's right. Yeah.
So like, how important is it? And what happens if you have somebody that says, well, we work with all different types of businesses. What's the pros and cons there?
I mean, the pros are they tend to have a broader knowledge base of things, and they can handle
Multiple,
not any
yeah.
situations, but multiple different things that might arise in your life. Of course, the disadvantage is the broader you get, the less you really know. I mean, I can present myself as knowing everything, but that's not true.
We all know that's not
Right.
true.
Yes. I'm done. But it's the only advantage is if you are in a specialized industry that requires that knowledge. I
Yeah.
mean, people, you know, I can say I only work with dentists, but you know, they're still a business owner. There's a lot of aspects that come along with it outside of them being a dentist that I need to know. I need to understand that apply to any business owner.
Yeah.
That apply
Agreed.
to any industry.
Yeah.
I would like my guy to specialize or have a really good understanding of what I do, but handle multiple, because there's so much crossover. There's so many other things that you learn by handling. Like our client base is so diverse.
Yep.
And I pick up things from these people over here that I benefit to these people over here and vice versa. And there's so much overlap. And if I only dealt with this one type, I would probably lose so much crossover because you just don't see anything.
Because you don't, yeah. And what does the dentist do? What do they all have to have? They have to have a place to work, right? And what do, I mean, I don't know the percentage, but a large percentage of them ultimately do. They buy their own office.
Yep.
And then
and
what
then they
it's
buy
become,
equipment.
or they buy equipment. And once they buy their office, what is involved? Now you own real estate.
Yeah.
And you're still the same person. You're still a dentist.
And they have to deal with a lot of overhead in mortgage payments on their building and or their equipment. I know one dentist that has $1 million of debt in equipment.
Sure.
Dental equipment.
Dental equipment's very expensive.
Very. And
Very.
and it's a whole separate company. He set up an entire leasing company. He has a company that owns his dental equipment. He has another company that owns his real estate, and he's a dentist. And I'm thinking to myself, there's multiple lines of business here, multiple streams of income, you know, all dependent on each other. I understand how that works. But if I have a guy that just does dentists, these two businesses over here, he's like, well, I know how to structure this. You know, we'll just do the best we can over here. And that's why I think you need to have a cross diverse.
And what's behind all of that? Why does he have all of this stuff separated into different businesses?
Because there's tax advantages.
Well, maybe. Could I mean? I assume.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely part of it, but a lot of it has to do with liability, which is something, you know, as a CPA, most people don't think that I can provide them with that kind of advice, but it's essential that we know that. Well, I mean,
it's part of it.
That's part of a lot of times. I always keep coming back to real estate. It's just an easy example. If you're going to own a rental property, you don't. If you, Paul, own this business and you want to buy this office, you don't want to own this office in the same company that is your operating business. Why? Because of a liability. Simple.
Somebody trips in front of the sidewalk, I can lose everything.
You can lose everything in your business. Yeah. Why have that when you can isolate it and say the only thing I can lose is this piece of real estate?
And if I have 6 buildings, every single one of those buildings needs to be separated from the other for the same exact reason.
I mean, yes.
You can have a holding company, but every single one has to have a silo.
Yes, that's the best situation.
Yeah.
But it ultimately comes back to risk, like we spoke about earlier. It depends on what they're worth. What are you willing to risk within this one business? legal business entity.
Sure, totally agree. Okay, we gotta hit some more questions here. Another one is, how do you bill for your service? One thing I've noticed in the CPA space is they're changing rapidly on the billing and the services provided. A lot of CPAs now are starting to offer investments. It is a big push in the industry. I think there's probably going to end up being the next several years a big crackdown on what you're allowed and not allowed to do and why, because there's conferences happening all over the US on a daily basis on why CPAs need to be offering investments. Because there's this whole other stream of income that you're missing out on.
It's all driven by you
blah.
can make more money, right?
So help me understand what kind of answer does the average person out there or complicated situation person out there want to hear when I ask the question to a CPA, how do you charge for your service?
They want to hear, this is how much you're going to charge me.
Like flat rate.
Before I do anything. Flat. And how we charge is we charge by the hour. But some CPAs just say, if you come on board as my client and you ask me, what you're going to do, how much is this going to cost? They're going to say, well, I don't know. I charge by the hour, and however long it takes me is how much it's going to cost. They want to know. Or what we do is we charge by the hour, but we use our hourly rates to estimate what we think it's going to cost us to do your return. And then we say, we're going to charge you this amount of money. If it takes us longer, then that's on us and we eat.
Yes.
We messed up, but we're not going to charge you more because we agreed that this is what it's going to cost. But and that's just for the typical, preparing a tax return or whatever. But if we're doing consulting engagements, then you can't estimate that.
Yeah.
I mean, no one knows how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
Certain things, that would be charged back.
All right, and then another question is, can you represent me in an audit? What would most CPAs say there?
Yes, they should say yes.
Okay, good. That's an easy one.
They should stand behind their word.
How do you keep up with changes in tax law?
Just constant study.
So for me, what do I want to hear a CPA tell me? Like, what's a comforting answer that I'm like, all right, this guy's doing his job?
That we're taking CPE classes on any new changes in the law, that we're reading. I mean, how do you educate yourself on anything?
I surround myself with other financial advisors.
Other people, or you have to read. You have to educate yourself. You have to stay abreast of what's going on, what might be coming down the pipe. What is Congress talking about? Certainly, when they do pass something, then it's on me to read all this new law and understand it.
One of the things that happened this last year is they changed the R&D tax credits.
Yep.
And I got so fired up about that.
That's putting it lightly.
I'm so upset about that. They didn't take it away. They just changed it, made it impossible to use. So they cost me so much more money in taxes. And my CPA, I called you. I think I called you about that. And I'm like, what do you know? Like, how could the government do this? They cost me so much more money in taxes because they just wanted to hurt small business. That was so clear that they just wanted to crush small business. Yep. How, in that situation, just comes down to reading, just like you said.
Yep.
All right. 2 more questions. How accessible are you? What should a CPA answer that? How should they answer that? If I need to get a hold of you, I have questions because so many people call CPAs
him on April 14th.
If you want to be
really quick to answer.
Depends. That's the answer. It depends.
That's the day we're going to do our next podcast together.
It's necessary. That comes down to a relationship. Where 90% of the clients we get, I always ask, why are you here? What happened to your old relationship? Well, I called this guy and he never called me back. I've been trying to get in touch with him for 4 months and he's never responded to anything.
So he's on vacation. It's May.
I can't help you if I don't ever talk to you or communicate with you or answer your questions. And so, I need to be available. I'm not always available. If someone's calling me right now, I'm saying, hey, I'm doing a podcast with Paul. Yeah. Can't answer your call. All right, I need to call you back.
Last question. And how often do you do this? Can you provide me with a reference, like somebody that's worked with you for a long time? And do you ever get asked that? Should people be asking that?
I do get asked that. Mostly not by individuals, but business owners. If we're bidding on some work with a business, then they want to know. They always want a reference of who's in their industry, because I can tell you all day long that I work in this industry all the time. But if I can't provide you with people that we do work with in your industry, then maybe not. But they should, you should be able to provide that. I mean, a good reference speaks to a lot of your ability.
Yeah.
Do you have a good relationship with these people? They can tell you, do I do good work, or do I just churn out your tax return and never talk to you? So I think it's important.
Question. All right. So thank you so much for all this information. How does somebody get a hold of you? They wanted to hire the great Keith.
I don't know. I'm pretty old school. They call Paul.
No, they're not going to call
number.
Me. What is your phone number? What's your website? How do they get a hold of you?
I don't know. Actually, no, we're redoing
He never
our
calls
website.
himself.
What?
Our website is gbkcpas.com, but it's being
You're redoing your website, but that's going to be the domain.
I think it's just going to be gbk.com after that.
Oh, wow.
But
Drop
we will
in
let
the
people
CPA.
know.
Well, that's just a forward. So the current website is what?
gbkcpas.com.
gbkcpas.com.
So you can find me there. Yes, you can. It has our email addresses and phone numbers and everything.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I
This
enjoyed
has
it.
been great.